Hello, welcome to the March 1st, 2024 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Endo and I'm the host of the live stream. If you've not attended a live stream before, how it works is you could submit questions in advance by going to Club Cubase at steinberg.de and sending an email, or you could just simply ask your questions in the live chat field. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase you're running, whether it's 11, 12, 13, if it's what level of Cubase, whether it's LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro. Also, if you could specify what operating system you're running, that information is always helpful. We should have an index of all of the topics pinned to the top of the comments field later tonight. And if you post a question, you don't see an immediate response, if you could try to refrain from asking the same question repeatedly. We'll try to get through all the questions in chronological order as they are asked. So once again, we will have an index of all the topics of today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field. And that should happen several hours after the live stream ends. If you wanted to search for topics that have been asked in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com. And we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for providing a wonderful website where people could search for over the 31,000 questions that have been asked. We also want to give special thanks to Agent K and Jazz Dude. They're not Steinberg employees. They just serve as moderators, helping, just to make sure it's a great community for the Cubase users. So we want to give special thanks to them. We also want to give special kudos to Jazz Dude for his work with the Cubase Nation Discord. It's a wonderful resource of information for the Steinberg community. So once again, my name is Greg Endo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America. I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and I'm the host today. I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. So if you are watching live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And with that, we will go ahead and begin. So we see Frankie Rock asks, "Hi Greg, can you give us a more detailed look at how to create user presets in the Logical Editor? Many thanks, Frank from New York." All right, so when we want to do something in the Logical Editor, I'm going to just add a MIDI track. I will come here and I will just kind of draw in some notes here. And let's say I want to create a condition to raise all the velocities of the particular MIDI note. So we can see all of our velocities here. And let's say we want to make a Logical Editor preset to raise the velocities of all of the MIDI. So let me just, so we'll come here, we'll just make this a little larger so it's easier to see. Okay, so when we want to do this and to save a preset, I'm going to make sure that we have MIDI data in the project. We're going to go to our MIDI menu, to Logical Editor. Now there's different functions. And what kind of action do we want to take? Do we want to delete something? Do we want to transform, change? Do we want to insert? Do we want to copy? Do we want to extract to a different track? Do we want to select events? So let's say in this case, I want to raise all velocities by a value of 10. So we're going to change the value. So we're going to say first type is equal to note. So, or we could just come here and say velocity. So we'll just start with type is equal to note. And then what we want to do is take the velocity. So we define what we want to do, like what we want to change in the top and how we want to change it in the bottom. So let's say we want to, now we will choose velocity, and do I want to add 10? Do I want to subtract 10? Do I want to multiply by a particular factor or randomize values? So let's say we want to add 10. So as we come over here, we will choose 10. Let's see if I get my keyboard to go to the correct computer. Okay. And now as I run this, it will increase the velocity values by 10 for those particular notes. Now to save this as a preset, we would click in the preset field, a little drop arrow. We could save changes as preset and type it in. So now that we've done that, we could call up that preset anytime we want. We could see it under user presets. We could put it into folders. So we can see add 10 to velocity value. So, but there's, you know, a plethora of different capabilities and options using the logical editor. And if you want a particular MIDI condition if there's a particular MIDI condition that you want, I would be happy to show you how to create a logical editor to do that. All right, so Musical Experiment says Cubase 13.021 has been the most stable release so far. Please let the developers know. Sure, plugin crashes here and there, bringing down Cubase, but not because of Cubase. That's great. That's working well for you. All right, we see inactive user on. And he has a question. I have a question. How can I put several tracks on the left side in a folder? And how can I put all my buses into folders so I can expand, collapse them if I need space to work? Okay, so if I have all of these tracks in a folder, so I'm going to just shift. I'm going to select like the bottom folder, select the bottom track, select the top track while holding down the shift key. I can now right click and we'll move selected tracks to new folder. So now all these tracks are now collapsible into that folder. And if we have a number of buses, so I will add a group track. So let's say we'll add 4 group tracks. Come here. So now I could put these into a folder. So we'll right click, move selected tracks to new folder. We can give this particular folder a name. So we'll say groups, and we'll call this folder tracks. And then if I wanted to put these 2 folders within a folder, I could select the folders, right click, remove selected tracks, but we'll take our folders here. And then we'll move that, and we'll just call this our project. So now I could have a project folder, I could see my tracks, and I could see my groups. So once you have the tracks selected, again, come here and right click and move selected tracks to new folder. So let me know how that works out for you. All right, question, is there a best practice regarding keeping my desktop files and my notebook files synchronized? So it could really make it that some people will keep like an entire project on a cloud drive. I know some people that are kind of doing this, playing back projects from like OneDrive or Cloud Drive, and that way they could open up the project in a desktop or a notebook and kind of be editing the same files. That may not work depending on how many audio files or samples you're streaming. So, but if you are, there isn't kind of an automatic synchronization between the two, but if you want it to have all the settings, not necessarily like the projects, but the same settings, at this point, you could go to your profile manager and export a profile from your desktop and have that profile with all your key commands, your user created elements, and have that on your laptop if you wanted to, so you could kind of keep your program settings. So it depends on, you know, if you wanted to have the same environment in both, you may have to periodically, you know, if you make changes, export your profile from one computer to another. If you wanted all of the files, some people will take the files and load it onto a Dropbox, a OneDrive, even on WeTransfer and then download it. But, you know, making a change, but that would still have to be kind of stored. If you make a change, you know, if you have the project that's stored on the cloud, if you're comfortable with that, you could do that. And then those changes, if you open multiple computers, you know, the project and media from the same location in the cloud, that could work. Some people may not want to risk all of their data being on the cloud for copyright reasons and stuff like that. So those are a couple of different approaches. Great to see Peter Wild checking in from Switzerland. We have John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. We have Lawrence from Barn Door Recording in Rhode Island. Thanks for joining us. We have James Bestini from Beverly Hills. Thanks for being on. The artist known as Love from New York. Uno Memento from Finland. We missed having you on the Zoom social, but we realize that you're traveling. But great to see you on. Artist known as Love says, everyone please hit the like button. Dallas LaRue asks, I'm familiar with the control room and cues. What I don't understand is to download presets in the whole section at the top right of the control room. Thanks, Greg. Okay. So let's say we're in our control room. So I'm not sure where the download presets are. So there are, if we have external connections, like sometimes people may have like a tape recorder or like a streaming device that we could choose between. So if we have that connected to inputs on our audio interface, we could do that. And maybe it's the downmix presets. So if we have... So there's these presets here, the downmix presets. So, and what this could allow us to do, if we have a file, just play something that's not copyright. This would allow us to take like our stereo mix, and when we go to the downmix presets here, we could listen to this in mono, or if you're doing this in 714, this will allow you to kind of fold down, so you could do like a mono mix, then check mono compatibility for any phasing issues, or your stereo mix as well. So let me know, Dallas, if these are the presets that you're talking to. But they will just allow you to, if you're working in surround, allow you to listen to it in different speaker monitoring configurations with different channels. All right, we see Michael Teams is on from Weatherford, Texas. It's Friday and he wants everyone to whack the like button. And we see Michael Marshall from Somerset, UK. All right, so we see Patrick ask, hi Greg, have you found a way of selecting tracks that are routed to the stereo out? Remember the comment I left under the last Club Cubase live stream. All right, so let's say, you know, I was playing around with this a bit. Let me just go to, we'll show it in this project here. So if we want to, so I think that we could set the routing, but we'll take a look at the project logical editor for a way that's automatically could do this. So let's say we want to select and we say, we come here, we'll say, so if I want to select all the tracks here that are going to the stereo out, we could do that. If we are working with groups, like if we have multiple groups, let me just open up a different project to show this. So let's say in this example I have, and I think one of the examples you mentioned in a comment from the last live stream was that we have like two groups that are being routed. So let's say in this case, when we play,
do you recall
I have
we first met?
a vocal group and an instrument group.
It was 7th grade in the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coat.
So now what I've done in this case, and I thought that if you wanted to, if these were all going to a particular, so these, when we look at the routing on these tracks, we can see that these are all going out of, this is basically our stereo output bus, but we're using the sends to send to a group. So let's go to that project logical editor again and say when we go to our setup, so this would allow us to select everything that's going to the stereo out. But we could also so we're going to select, let's say media type, we're going to say all right, so we could select all the tracks going there. Now if these channels, instead of going to the stereo out and using sends to send them to a group, like here I could see I have my Vox group and my instruments track. So if I take these particular tracks and let's say I want to take my vocal track and this is now going to my Vox, so let's say at this point, so instead of using sends, if they're going in the output bus here to the group, then I believe we can now, let's see if it will allow us to access. So now we can see that since that's an output, I could select all the tracks that are going to the Vox group. And if I wanted to take the other instruments, so let me just go to my routing here and say these instruments, like my guitar, piano, and the bass are going to the instruments group. So now I could say select all the tracks that are going to the instruments group. Let me just select the piano and make sure that's being routed. So, but you know, now at this point we could, so we have our channels, we could say, let's go to select from our vocal group or the instrument group. So let me know, you know, and I thought that you want, if you wanted it to be to the point where we wanted to be able to quickly increase, if we're not doing the group routing from the outputs here, but through sends, like here I could route tracks via sends to the groups like this. And if I wanted to increase those levels, I'll just revert this quickly. So now if we're using sends to send the tracks to the group, what we could do is, you know, as we would come over, I'll just show this on the lower zone here, we could place everything into Q-Link. So, and I'm using kind of the same All right, so let's say if I had these going, so I'm going to select these tracks here. So let's say I want my vocals going to just okay, I'm gonna just add my group channels here, sorry. All right, so we'll call this Fox and instrument. So now I could select, like these are linked, so I'm going to just come over here, and with Q-Link on, we're going to send these to my vocal group. And if I want to put these all at 0, and let's send these tracks here, the guitar, to instrument. So if we needed to decrease or increase the levels, if everything is set, you know, what I could do is I could select all the tracks, and if we are not sending it to the same group, which is I think unlikely, so if we have all these tracks selected, I could now, if I wanted to change the level going to just the Vox group or just to the instrument group, that we could adjust that without affecting the other routing. So if you want to, if they're being sent from the output, you could use the Project Logical Editor to come over here, and we just want to select and we base it on the output name / channel. So you could do it just directly there. You'll see your different groups that will be added. If you're doing it via sends, and you wanted to adjust the levels, I would select all the tracks and adjust via quick link. And then once quick link is, you could have all the tracks selected. Once quick link is enabled, at that point you could just adjust one of them and they'll all increase or decrease. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Patrick. All right, so we see Eric D asks, I always get a voice that's too robotic with a lot of artifacts. Can you help me, Greg? So Eric, let me know if what processing you're doing. So is it that when you're just recording audio that it's being processed, or is it like when you do tuning, or when you're using Very Audio, or when you are using, you know, or using the pitch correct plugin? Let me know if that's, you know, what's causing it, or if it's just your recording that sounds too robotic. So if you could share that information. Just looking through earlier comments. So yeah, if you could let me know that, Eric D, that'd be great. So Michael Teen's giving out virtual ice cream. All right, inactive user asks, is there a way to color grade new tracks in a gradient style, like from light green to dark green, manual or automatic? So if we go to our project menu, to our project color setup, and if we come over here to presets, if you wanted more gradients, what you could do is just come over here, just say we want 32 colors, and you could increase the number of tints. So as you do this, you could see you could have a lot more different gradients of green if you wanted to. So maybe if you wanted to do, and you could look at color tints or basic colors. So if you wanted to say, I want to see, 8 basic color tints, you could do this. But again, when we go to our color set here, you could just say, I want green. And then if you just move down vertically, you could just kind of add different tints of green if you wanted to, just by adjusting the vertical axis right there. And then you could colorize your channels as you see fit. All right, wonderful to see Soren from Sweden. Thanks for joining us. All right, set up by Marshall just says these are simply fantastic live streams. Cubase users are very lucky to have this kind of support. Bless you all. So thank you for the kind words, and just glad to be able to help people. All right, Carlo R390 asks, hi Greg, how to make one unique fader for several faders? For example, one fader for all drums. So if I wanted to take like all of my background vocals here, what we could do, there's a couple different approaches. One is we could right click and add a group channel to the selected. So I'll make it a stereo group. So now as I come here, we could adjust the volume and all of these particular tracks that are now routed to this group. Another method could be to just select all of those particular tracks. And if you wanted to, if you have effects on it, you could also just come over here and add a VCA fader to the selected tracks. So I'm going to say add VCA fader to selected tracks. And then you could use that as well. So you could also, if you want to, and these are linked already. So I'll unlink. So now I could adjust the VCA fader for all the tracks. One other method, and I'll show it in a different project here, is, so let's say I want to take all of my drums, as you mentioned in your example. So take these drums here, and if we just link, if we want to do a Q link, we could, with Q link turned on, we could move one fader, all the drums will move proportionally. Or again, add a VCA fader if you want to see the particular, we could automate that if you have automation. With the VCA fader, we can't necessarily add processing. If you wanted to add processing on that, what we could do is add a group channel to the selected channels. And as we do this again, we don't see these faders move, but all of the sounds are now being controlled by one master fader, and we could also come over here and apply EQ on the group channel. So if you wanted to do processing, we could assign it to a group. We could link the individual channels so that when moving one, all of them will move, or you could assign it to VCA fader, which is great if you have effects and existing automation. So a couple different approaches for that. All right, so we see from Alessandro Braz. Hey Greg, a VST3 of Waves plugin is causing Cubase to crash. Do you know why this is happening and how I can fix it? So generally, if it's going to be a Waves plugin that's causing the problems, I probably wouldn't be the best person to ask on how to fix a Waves plugin. So maybe you want to reach out to Waves, see if they have a live stream, or reach out to their support. So. All right, JO asks, hi Greg, could you explain how to export Dolby Atmos 5.1, etc., so that we can listen and test on a conventional AVR home theater? Thank you very much for your work. So when we come over here, we could listen to a Dolby Atmos. Once we have a project that's in Atmos, let me just sneak to find, I think I have a project that is set up in Atmos. So it is difficult to listen to it in a conventional home theater because I believe you'll still need components from Dolby to do it. So, when we export we go to our project and we go to our ADM authoring, here we could choose to export an ADM file. So now regular home receivers don't do that. If you buy the Dolby renderer plugin, you can export it to an MP4 file, but only if you have that particular plugin from Dolby. And at that point, you could put on a USB stick and play it through a receiver, but I think you need the Dolby renderer plugin to do that. So, and I'm not sure if Dolby has opened that up to third parties at this point, so I know it's kind of a bummer. All right, wonderful to see Nick, and it's great to see you on the Zoom social on Tuesday. All right, this Ninja Scared asks, is there a way to grab audio from another project and import it into an existing project I'm working in? All right, so let's say I have this project here, and I want to take audio from this project. One thing you do is just drag and drop between the two files. Another method, you can do that for multiple files as well, is to come over and say, I want to go to import audio file, we'll go to file, to import tracks from project. We could select a particular project, choose a track. We could put it onto the track that has the same name, or create a new track and come over. And now we could just have that particular file imported. So you could drag and drop, or choose to import tracks from project, select the project, choose the file. If you want only a particular range, if you want to carry over automation or not, if you want to replace events, if you want an absolute position relative or the cursor position. So two different methods for doing that. Great to see ProWash DFW on the live stream. Okay, Barrett asks, after creating a copy of a track, when I edit an event of the source track, then it will also be edited in a copy track. How can I separate the audio events to make edits only in one track? Okay, so let's say if I take this particular track here and I copy it to a different location, and I want to do processing on this file. If we come over, I'll just say, okay, I want to fade out on that file. A lot of times, every time that the file does it, it will fade out on all of them. So there is a preference for this. So basically what it is you're processing a file, but that same file is being used multiple times. So if you go to editing, to audio in the preferences, and you'll see on processing shared clips, you probably have process existing clip selected. So now when I have a selection of one file, I do a process such as a fade out. That process is applied to this file and any other file because it is the same audio file. When we change that preference, so again, preferences, editing audio, on processing share clips, we could just choose to create a new version. So now I could do processing on the same audio file, and as we go to do processing, it'll make a new audio file that won't affect the other files. So again, go to preferences, editing audio, and you probably want to choose create new version right there. All right. So we see from ProWash DFW says, "Hey Greg, heard Hans mention you last night. No, I didn't hear about it. Send me a link. Send a link to Club Cubase at steinberg.de. We'd love to see it. I haven't had a chance to catch up with him. I know he's been busy doing Dune 2 premieres and press stuff that I've seen on social media. But yeah, please share a link." All right. All right, so we see Arif B says, "Hello, everyone from the Netherlands. Greg, thanks for your reply and email." I think that was with the key command, so let me know if you have a hard time getting those to work. All right, Darren Flake just is saying hello to everyone, wishing everyone a happy Friday. Thanks for being on today. All right, so we see J.O. just says, "Thank you very much, Greg." I guess probably with the Atmos. All right, and we have Pertti Komenen from Finland. Thanks for joining us. Glad to have you here today. And just see Jazz Dude talking about encoding. Says older Nuendos had integrated Dolby digital encoders to burn the mix stream on a DVD or CD and could be used by a Blu-ray/DVD player to run by an AV receiver and 5.1 speaker setup. So yeah, in the old days of Nuendo, there were Dolby Digital AC3 and DTS encoders available, and at the time, they're very expensive. They're about $1,000 each, but you could have a like a DTS or a Dolby Digital encoded stereo wave file that when you played it back through a DVD player would decode back through the system, so you could audition it in surround. All right. We see Pertti and Uno Momento communicating in Finnish, I believe. All right, so I'm going to jump over to some of the questions. Okay. Okay, Alessandro Braz asks, "How can I have newly created tracks appear under a selected track instead of going all the way to the bottom of a session?" So if I come, let's say I have no tracks selected, so if I'm here in this project, I'll just switch to a different project for demonstration purposes here real quick. Okay, so if I have my bass track selected and I go to add an audio track, I think it goes directly below the selected track. So, if you want it below the selected track, when we go to add an audio track, we could do it like that. If we are doing something similar to like when we render files, because let's say if I did an audio mix down, I'll do just kind of a shorter section here. So if we do an audio export, and we do like an export audio mix down, and we choose to create an audio track, this would place it at the bottom of the project. But if we wanted to just, for instance, do the drums, so let me just split. So say if I wanted the drums, I wanted all the drums to go directly, if I wanted to mix down all my drums directly below the drums project, what I could do is go to Edit and to Render in Place. So I'll say, let's go to our render settings. I want to do this as one event. We'll do our channel settings. I want to mix down to one audio file. So now it's going to go below the last selected track. So as we do our render, we can see that a new track was automatically added directly below and not at the bottom. But if you're just adding tracks, you know, whatever track is selected, when you go to add a track, it'll go directly below that particular track. So let me know if that works for you. All right, so we have Mark Rabin just saying hi to Cubase users, hi Cubasers. He's about to keep out of range and wants everyone to hit the like button. Everyone, please say woof to Mark's dog Stella, Stella wants everyone to lick the like button. All right, I hope, Mark, you're able to make it back. It's always wonderful to have you on the live stream. All right, wonderful to see Brian Sawyer Sr. from Beulahville, North Carolina. Says, wow, was having Club Cubase withdrawals from missing Tuesday's meeting. Miss you guys. Yeah, I kept looking out just in case you didn't have, I kept looking for emails just in case you didn't have the link for some reason. But we missed having you and look forward to seeing you at the end of March. All right, John Costigan asks, hi Greg, I was studying an orchestral template that had more than 130 instances of Halion Sonic SE, and I wondered how I should approach Iconica Symphonic Orchestra. Thank you. So a lot of times templates are kind of set up with multiple instances of the same plugin. So let's say we do a new project. If we are in, let's go to an instrument track, and we'll do this with Halion Sonic SE, since that was what was asked. All right, and if we're loading in, so, you know, there's a Halion Symphonic Orchestra, which I think you have a license of from the Absolute, and there's also Iconica Sketch, which is part of 13, but I think you have 12, if memory serves right. But let's say if I want to do this, you know, so the reason why sometimes it can be kind of spread out. So let's do Halion Symphonic Orchestra. And if I come here, you know, I want to start with, sorry, I'll just find the right. All right, so let's say I want to do flute, oboe, which I know. Sorry. So let's say if I have one instance where we have a number of different instruments. So often why we have multiple instances is a lot of different instruments may not. So if we have, let's say, our winds here in one instance, I'll just set this up. Okay, so let's say we have like our winds in one instrument, our brass in another instrument. That for most playback systems, this will actually utilize one CPU core on a lot of instruments. Now, Halion Sonic and Halion 7 can both have multi-core support. So you could, and so basically if you think of one instrument, in most instrument playback systems will be one instrument per, like our Halion Sonic here will use one CPU core. So people will spread one single instrument across multiple instances, or instead of using one instrument to play back our 4 winds here, they will use 4 instruments to play back one wind sound each, so that the CPU cores are better utilized. So often that's when people will have 130 instances of one instrument to utilize CPU cores. But you could also, not all playback instruments will have, multi-core support. So it's not as required for Halion-based instruments. So that's often why you do it. But let me know if you wanted to have a template for, Halion Symphonic Orchestra, which is like what I think you have, in Iconica Sketch. Iconica is sold separately. And there's kind of a small version that's included with Cubase 13 called Iconica Sketch. As I think I remember from a previous live stream that you're getting a template from Jazz Dude for Iconica Sketch, so that may not work because it's a different sound set than Halion Symphonic Orchestra. But I could send you a rough template that a friend of mine made for Halion Symphonic Orchestra that he's used for years on projects, that I'd be happy to share via email with you. Okay. All right, Darren Flake asks, "Hi Greg, I would like to adjust the channel's delay compensation manually in the mixer for channels with plenty of third-party plugins or for the whole mix. How to do that in Cubase?" So when you're doing this, you don't, there's really no reason to adjust the channel's delay. You can adjust the channel delay, but all the plugins and third-party plugins are automatically delay compensated for. When you may run into it is when you're tracking, if you have a lot of plugins on that are imposing latency. At that point, that's when the delay would kind of kick in. But if we look right here so let's say if I have an audio track, I select the audio track, we have a delay directly here, so we could just kind of put in a pre-delay if needed. But if you wanted to know like what the exact latency is, so let's come over here to a couple of inserts and add some plugins. So I know like the vocal chain has a lot of latency on it. Let's go to like our multi-band compressor and some other plugins. Okay, so and we can see this on the channel strip here, and you can see it in earlier versions on the mix console, what these 3 plugins, what their latency is. And if we click here, we could actually break it down one by one. But as audio is played back, that's automatically compensated for. If you're doing a situation like this and you're recording into a track with those particular plugins, that will cause a delay, like a monitoring delay that you'll hear because it's being processed, adjusting the playback track earlier. We can't necessarily have something, have the audio play before it, be processed before it leaves your mouth if you're singing, for instance, or before you play the guitar note. So what we could do is just come to the bottom left-hand corner, the far left of the transport, and we could choose to bypass particular latent plugins so that we could minimize latency during the tracking process. And we could set the threshold for that by going into preferences. I believe it's to see if it's under VST. So our delay compensation threshold for recording, we have it set to 20 milliseconds. So you could set that to be a lower latency, but that's not going to affect in live input audio. But but if you needed to do it manually, you could do it like that. But generally, Cubase will automatically knows what the delay of each plugin is causing and will compensate for that on playback and play that track back earlier. All right, so we have Gard Eriksson checking in from Norway. It's such a great Norwegian name. What a great name. All right. All right, we see that Michael Teams is giving a gallon of Dutch vanilla ice cream to Mark Rabin and then a bag of goodies for Stella. So we got to have someone come up with our live stream dog treat for Stella. So maybe Michael Teams will assume the responsibility. All right, so we see Gard Eriksson just says, just a reminder, when selecting several instruments within Halion Sonic and placing them on different channels, you can drag and drop from the list straight to the channel you want the instrument on. So I guess if we're doing that, let's come over. If we come over here to Media Bay. So if we want this, just to kind of show that, we can just add that particular instrument like so. So that's a good reminder. Gard, thanks for letting us know. All right, Yash Desai asks, how do I edit multiple MIDI clips and MIDI CC data on the same / different MIDI channels? Please explain the 3 different MIDI editing modes in detail. So I think that the CCs would still kind of be like only showing one particular track at a time, because that could cause all sorts of unintended consequences. So let's take a look. Okay, so now when we are here, so let's say we're in our key editor. So right now we're looking at our violin part. So we will now come over and say we want to look at our flute part, and let's say bassoon. All right, so we have these in different colors. Let's say if I wanted to, let's just draw in. Let's do expression here. All right, so right now we could, when we want to kind of search, so we could do all parts on the active track. And what this is going to allow you to do is once I come over here, we could say, let's go to, and then once we have that selected, we can see that this is a little square. So what I want to do is to click, and now all of the events, so before I click there, we are only seeing one particular event. We have also the first mode where we see kind of all parts. So we could kind of pick and choose. So we say, okay, we want flute, bassoon, oboe. And as we do this, so as we see the one that is underlined, so that is the one that we're editing. So if I wanted to draw in, let's say, main volume, So CC7, I could draw in my volume, but that's not going to reflect on the flute part when that's main, when I go to my bassoon, or when I go to violin. So the CCs, it makes sense to kind of keep those independent of each other. And then we could choose just to do editing only on the active part and have the others as kind of visual reference until they are selected. So, but, you know, drawing in CC, if we're looking at 3 different parts, drawing in CC on one of them isn't going to draw in CC on all 3 parts. It's going to be determined by which particular part is underlined there. Just clear my throat. All right. See, Heartbreak Time Machine says the orchestral templates are where his free time goes to die. All right, so we see Darren Flake says, sorry, Greg, but I want to calculate and type them in manually like some other production DAWs. I like to print routings or effects in Project with plugins. It's always delays I had to do manually. So, you know, not all DAWs do full delay compensation, so you might have to do it in other DAWs. But again, all of the, you know, let me know what you can't do currently, but because all of the plugins are delay compensated, so you shouldn't have to do any of that. Like, you know, maybe other programs, I don't use other programs, maybe you have to. I know that Cubase and Nuendo were the first programs that had full delay compensation, or even broached, were the first company to broach the concept of delay compensation. So I'm not sure what the status is on other programs, but I don't think it's necessary that your tracks will play in time. All right. Yash asks, how do I turn off one-shot mode inside a Groove Agent SE? All right, and I'll just drag a track here. Okay, so I'm just going to drag this in. So if you go to sample, and then you could just, so now when I play and I release the key, the sample plays to the end. So if I select the pad, go to on instrument to edit, and then go to sample, we can now put it on to out of one-shot mode. So now as soon as I release the key, it stops playing. And if we wanted this to continuously go on, so just come right here. So default mode is one shot, so it plays a sample all the way through the end. So if we want that off, we could just say until release, and now as soon as I release, it will play back until the MIDI note is released. So once again, on the instrument, edit, sample, you'll see the one shot there. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right. So DJ Mixes How can I shorten or extend the length of MIDI notes to 1/16, for example? Okay. So say I want to take all of these MIDI notes here and make them all, I'll just do a smaller example here. When it'll be less confusing. Okay, so if we want to fix all of the lengths of particular MIDI notes, okay, so we want to take the length of all these MIDI notes and make them 16th notes. I think we can do this in the MIDI logical editor. So we'll get a setup. We want to transform length, and we'll make it equal to a 16th note. All right, we'll just make this note here. Sorry, my error. So we'll say type is equal to notes, and we want length to be set to a fixed value. So we see bar beat 16th note division, and then we have by default 120 divisions by 16th notes. So I'm going to set this to 1. And now every note is set to a 16th note. So come here, apply. And if I want every note to be an 8th note, I would put this value to 2. So now every note is an 8th note. So once again, we want to choose, we're going to transform MIDI notes, and we're going to set their length to a fixed value of 16th notes. So I'll go ahead and save that as a preset. So even now, if I wanted to undo, let's just draw in some random. Come here, make sure none of the notes are selected, and now all are set to 16th notes. All right, reading through comments. All right, great to see Vishnu back from India. He says, Cubase 13 Pro user, how to copy event from one track to another track without any timing change using keyboard shortcut. I use Command plus drag, but no keyboard. Okay, so if you don't want to use keyboard, so I'll show you just a super easy way with keyboard here. So let's add an audio track here below. All right, so if we want to make a copy, we could hold down the Alt or Option key and let go. We could also, if we hold down, if I move it vertically first, I'm holding down my Alt or Option key, and then I hit Command or Control. Now that will restrain the motion, so I can't move it in time. So it's the same exact time. So if I release the Control key, so you could do that. But if you don't want to use a keyboard, so let's come here. We could probably, if we do a nudge that would move it, but we can make a macro. So, check out and see if that keyboard shortcut would work. If not, we'll build a macro here. Okay, so we're just going to copy the event, add that command. We are going to navigate down. And then we're going to choose paste at origin. Under edit, and let's add that command. All right, so now when I want to come here, let's see if this works. I'll run the macro. All right. So I'll just try it manually here. Okay, let me just try. Select none. So we could do this as a macro. So if we have the event or events selected, so let's say I have these events, we're going to choose edit, copy, edit, select none. So that would copy those events. It would select none of them. And this is with this particular track selected. We could navigate down. And then we could paste at origin. So with this track selected, I can just come right here and run the macro like that. If you're on this particular track, you could probably get rid of the navigate down. So let's see if we come and I have those selected, we can run the macro. So depending on if you have the track selected or not, so if you have like the bottom track selected that you want it to be pasted into, just edit, copy, select none, and then edit, paste at origin if you didn't want to use a keyboard to do that. So let me know if that's helpful for you. And great to see you back on, Vishnu. All right, 808 King asks, hi G, I'm doing the file prep so I can mix. I have my group channels, drums, etc., individual tracks, etc., everything exporting fine, single or multi. Problem is nothing sounds like it's coming out of the mix. Is there any way you can show me how to make groups or individual tracks go out the master for my mix prep? Also, how does that cue work? All right, so not sure what the cue is. Maybe if you could specify that. So let's say I have this project here, and let's say I have like, different group processing, and I have, so let's say I want to take all of my drums here. All of my drums are going into this group, and I want to do some bus processing or some group processing. So we'll just come here. Alright, so we have that, and let's say on my master fader, my master bus, I want to just come over. Alright, so let's say I just fully crunching everything. So now we have kind of group processing, individual processing on tracks, and master processing. So if we wanted to kind of capture that sound when we do our export audio mix down, I'm going to go to my file menu to export audio mix down, and I'm going to select multiple. So let's say I want and we're doing mix prep, so I wanted my drum group here, and let me just label the drum group. Okay, so now export audio mix down. All right, so I want the drum group. I want my individual tracks. And what we could do now is there's this effects section. This could be critical. So if we have everything going on our master, and we want to include the sound of our master bus processing, here I'm just going to choose our master, and now we will let's just I'll create a new project with all of this, and we just have kind of not the full section for demonstration purposes. Let it do its magic. I think 2 more tracks. All right, so now we can see our drum group. So now we'll listen to our drum group, and that's going to have so now we have all of the processing from the group. Now each of the individual tracks has the processing from the groups, from the effects ends, and from the master process. So as you do that, just make sure that when you go to the export audio mix down, the really critical thing is just on your effects that you're very aware of these settings, because that could drastically change the sound. Let me know if that's helpful for you, 808 King. All right. All right. My chat field just jumped on me. All right, so we see from Diamond District Studios, can we have the editor and mixer window follow each other when turning off visibility on tracks? I often have to do the process twice when cleaning up unused tracks in my template. So I believe it already does. There's this function for that. So we'll come over here and we'll see under visibility that we could sync the project and mix console 1. So we see these little 2 horizontal lines. So now if I come here, let's hide I'll go to visibility, let's hide my drums. When I go to the mix console here, and I'll just hide my input channels, that is synchronized. So if I add these tracks in, we can see that those settings are synced. And you could choose to do it on mix console 1, 2, 3, or 4, so that those will be in sync. So make sure that you go just to the right of the visibility tab and that you synchronize the visibility between the project and the mix console. And then, so if I come here, I only want those channels And now we can see that as we do this, these are synced between the mixer and the project window. So make sure you just have that enabled there. All right, so you see Soren says, you skipped my question about VST Live. I don't think I missed it. I rewound the Hangout. But yeah, feel free to ask it again. I'd be happy. Sorry if I missed it. It was just unintentional on my part. Sorry about that. All right, so we see Eve says cheers from Tremblant, QC Canada. Thanks for doing this. So you're welcome. Just always happy to help people along with their Cubase journey. All right, so we see from Vishnu says, I think I confused you, Greg. I want to know if there's a keyboard shortcut for the command plus drag. Thank you so much for the macro. Check that out. So one other thing you could do, if it's not copying but moving, so let's say if I have an empty audio track here, okay, and I just want it to move this event, not copy it, so that it's not there. There is a nudge up and nudge down command. So if we go to your key commands, you'll see under, move this to the center. But if you come here, there is a nudge down and nudge up. So I'll assign those to my nano control here, just so you can see how this works. So let's go to my MIDI remote. So we'll say nudge down on this key, and we'll do nudge up on this key. So now what I could do is just simply, I'll just add a number of blank audio tracks here. So we could take this particular event, and so once I have that selected, we can nudge up or nudge down. So it's not a copy, but if you wanted to do that, there's key commands just for nudge up and nudge down. So that may be another method of doing it as well, but you could do the macro or, Alt Option plus Control or Command. All right, it's wonderful to see Martin checking in from Germany. Thanks for joining us today. All right, we see from Gnome Guri. Hi, I just opened an old Cubase project. I have Pro, but the project opens on Cubase Elements. How can I change this to open on the new version? Thanks. So one thing you could always do is just come over here and go to File and open the project. So that's a method, but it's probably at the operating system level. So if we come here, let's go to some documents. All right, and within your operating system, if you right click on a file, you could just say open with, and then you could choose which particular, like this type of file is opened with this particular program. So it's kind of the same on Mac or Windows, very similar. Like I think in Windows it's called a file association, so the .cpr file. So you could just change it at the OS level. All right, we have Secret Studios just saying hello to everyone. Jay from Connecticut, thanks for being on. It's great to have you on the live stream. All right, we have from 808 King, okay, just about the queue says, thanks Greg, how does the export queue work for me? Okay, so let's say we're in this particular project. Okay, so I'm going to revert this quickly here. Or I'll just get rid of some tracks that we added. All right, so let's say I have different scenarios that I need to export for. And, you know, we would always feel, you know, we'd get a lot of particular feedback from, you know, we work closely not only with great composers, but their assistants. So, you know, and your assistants would often have to do printing to multiple formats. I can remember one of my friends telling me they were working, I think it was on Dunkirk, the Christopher Nolan film, and then they would just have to provide all sorts of different comments. So it would be like, okay, I'm driving it, you know, he told me that Christopher Nolan just told him, it's like, okay, I'm driving in my car, send me an MP3 of the soundtrack. I need this resolution. So we came up with export queues to simplify this process. So when we want to come over, we'll go to our export audio mixdown. So let's say we need to deliver multiple files in different formats. So this is when an export queue can come in handy. So let's say we need to do an MP3 file. So we would say we want to take our stereo out. At this point, we will choose it to be our MPEG layer 1.3, and we want it to be at 320. So once we have this done, what I'm going to do is add it to the queue. I need to have a 24-bit 96K WAV file. So we will come here, say we want 24-bit stereo interleaved, and we need it at 96K. Add that to the queue. I need to take all of my stems. So we'll go to multiple, and I need these to be my groups. I need all of my audio channels, virtual instruments, etc. And I need these to be split channel. So when we do this, we're going to add that to the queue. I need these to be interleaved. So we'll come here, add that to the queue. Now let's say I want all of my multi-track exports. I just only want the groups. So I have everything kind of created and I have multiple groups. So I want to send like group stems. So we'll come and let's add that to the queue. Now I want to send everything dry. So we'll come and say, okay, we're going to have this dry. Add that to the queue. Now I wanted to include all of my processing except the master bus processing. So let's add that to the queue. And now I want to have a separate one that is our master processing. Let's add that to the queue. So now all I have to do is just come over and we could start the queue export, and instead of having to do each of those independent separate scenarios one at a time, which could be incredibly boring, monotonous, I could just have these and I could save these as presets so that as soon as we go to our file, I could export to 10 different formats, have that saved as a preset, and just say start export queue, go get a coffee, and it's going to go through and do all those scenarios for me in the order that I just did, so I don't have to do them one by one by one by one. I could just have it as an export cue and just have it spit out whatever file formats I need. So that's what the export cue is good for. Let me know if that makes sense. The Heartbreak Time Machine says, I can't believe I have no questions today. Well, everyone's getting to be so good at Cubase. That's a good sign. So, but maybe we could learn something from someone else's question. All right, Secret Studios asks, Hi Greg, so glad that you're on right now. I'm a bit stuck. I'm trying to automate a bus tracks, but for some reason the parameter currently selected as mute won't allow change to volume. Okay, so let's say we have our drum group here, so let's say as we're doing this, all right, so I'm going to open up the automation lane, because generally when we see the group channel, instead of, when we see the volume is right here. So the group channel, since there's no contents within the group, by default will show the, just to the right of the group, because the volume is selected here. So we could say, so the volume is, you don't have to open up the automation lane, just on the group track itself, that line is the volume. So, and it's just something so that you wouldn't have to open up an automation lane, because again, the group track has no actual media. It's just an audio, we think of it as just summing the particular audio files. But there's no audio file on the group track. So the group track doesn't contain anything. So as soon as it is open, there you have the volume parameters to change. And when you go to open automation, since the volume is open, that's why you can't select the volume, because it's already open. But you could select other parameters here. So let me know if that makes sense, Jay. All right, John A. Walker just says, great to be with you live, or great to be live with you. So we're glad that you can make it live. All right, wonderful to see Michael from Coast Mastering. All right. Says, hey Greg, I know you showed this 1,000 times, but I'm still having issues. Can you demonstrate multi-track drums recorded, not on a grid/tempo track? Detect tempo, setting first bar, downbeat, then quantize drum, 2 types of tasks. Quantize drums to fixed tempo, and then make every other track also sync to tempo. Second is to map all other instruments to varying time live performance drums. Next step is warping single hits in multi-track drum track. Things I don't normally work on a grid, and for some reason this has been a struggle to get. Okay, so let's see if we could do that with these drums here. So these may have been kind of recorded on a grid. Let me see if I could just get something that's not a multi-track, not recorded on a grid. Just do a new project. So I think I have a project here we could use. It's not ever recorded to the grid. Okay, so now we'll come over here. So we have drums, and if we put these on a grid, no correlation between them. All right, so let me just go through the different scenarios. All right, so we have drums not recorded to grid. All right. Okay, so we want to detect tempo setting, first bar, downbeat, quantize drums. Okay, so this point, let's do a tempo detection. So I'm going to just take the overhead drums here. And let's do a tempo detection from that from our project menu. Okay, and sorry, did that too quick. Let me just do my tempo detection again. All right, let me just see if I can get the first kind of hit lined up. We try different source, maybe kick. All right, let me just find a source here. Okay, so I'm just going to do quick kind of manual adjustment here. So I'm leaving this window open. So we say, let me just try another example here of our project that wasn't recorded to the grid. Okay, so let's say this is with other tracks. So we turn on Alright, so here I'm going to select my overhead drums. Okay, so we have our tempo map. Okay, so I'm just going to move up tempo map to the top here, and we'll move our signature track. So let's find our downbeat, because we'll probably have a pickup note maybe. Okay. So say we want our 4/4 to start there. Okay. Okay, so now we have our tempo detection done. And then we'd say setting the first bar. So I just kind of listened to where we're going here. Yeah, so I just saw your text, Michael. And if you want to share a project with me, if you have just the ability to share, I'd be happy to kind of take a look at it, but this is kind of similar. So let's say we're going to now, on this particular downbeat, wait. So now that we have that done, if we wanted to, instead of having to necessarily quantize every single part, what we could do is I'm going to select all of the parts. And if we kind of like the timing of this, what we could do is come to my audio menu, to advanced, and we'll set the definition from tempo. So again, we'll come here to advanced, and then we're going to save it, let's say, in the project. All right, so we should see it. And then once that is kind of set up here, we should be able to just kind of change the tempo globally. So let's say if I want this to be 156. So then all the tracks now. So once you're at this point, if you need to tighten up particular, drum hits together, what you could do is just come over and let's say we will grab our hit points. So once we do this, we could say, okay, we want to go into free warp mode. We go to audio, we're going to take our hit points. We go to real-time processing. We could convert these to create the warp markers from the hit points. And as we kind of zoom in, if you need to move particular elements over, you can say, okay, I just want to take these elements, and then, sorry, just acted up on me. But then you could just kind of do free warping on the particular event right there. And see, just to see some text coming in with this, let me just grab those again. Let me just open up the project here one more time. All right, so again, I'll just come and we'll do our tempo detection. All right, so let's say we move my tempo and my signature track. All right, so I got a couple texts from Michael. Let me just read those real quick. I'm not able to move the downbeat, setting time signature exactly the same way as you came across. Why did the second project work and not the first? What was different? All right, so so when I come over here, let's to set this up. So I'm going to close this. So again, we'll come here and at this point, since we have that node, we put in our 4/4. So now let's select all of the events. Let's go to audio to advanced, and let's set definition from the tempo. Usually does that for all of the tracks. And then once you have the definition from tempo, then it will follow, basically all of this metadata is going to be inserted into the file. And if you needed to move individual notes, so that would negate a lot of the quantization. But I'll try it, and Michael had asked why it didn't work on the first file. Let me just try opening up that file, and I'll mute some of the material on it as well and see. So it's a more traditional multi-track. It's a tribute act, but it sounds very close. I don't want to get a copyright infringement. All right, let me just mute some tracks. Okay, so let's say now this isn't really. All right, so now let's come to overheads on this. Let's see if we get our tempo from this. So we'll go do our tempo detection. right, so now okay, so let's say we have that, and once we are, so I'm going to select all of the audio in the project here. And let's get to set definition from tempo. So right now we're playing at 120 beats a minute, all the tracks. And if I go to, let's say, 80 beats a minute, or if we go back to our original tempo, so there we can see that that is kind of working as expected. Let me go back. I know Michael's texting me in the middle. All right, so all right, let me just open up the original question. So we just did our tempo detection of that. All right. And let's go ahead and set our downbeat of it. So we're going to do this in the signature track. So right now our signature track is set to 1/4. So we say at this point is where we want the downbeat. So right on this tempo node, put in our 4/4. So now we listen to tempo. So we just put in the node there, and we just okay. So next, so I think we have. The second is to map all the other instruments. So once we did that. So we'll go to next up is warping single hits in a multi-drum track. Thanks. So if we wanted to move, like let's say our snare here, what we could do is again come over here to the free warp, and we're going to just kind of zoom in. And if you don't have, so you may have to go to audio to real-time processing and then create the warp markers from the hit points. And now you could just come over here and move the snares like individually where you want, or if you want to do that kind of for multiple tracks. So let's say you want the bottom snare, hi-hat, mic. If you want all of those to move simultaneously, you could just select your multiple tracks like so. So let me just check, make sure. I know there's a bunch of text messages coming. And then once you kind of have, let's say, you know, if we want this all to be to a fixed tempo instead of fluctuating. So let's say we're here. Now we have subtle fluctuations. But if I want it to be fixed, all you'd have to do is, you know, just like we showed before, just kind of change the tempo, take it off, and then you could adjust the tempos. So, but you know, if you want to give me a call right after the live stream ends, which is 2 o'clock your time, Michael, if you're free, I'd be happy to take a look at your particular project. All right. Sorry, it took a while to get through. All right. See, just see a comment to export alternatives in Cubase are amazing. All right, the Heartbreak Time Machine says, is there a way to create a time code track? I'd like to display Vitsy as well as bars and beats. So if you want, you know, if you wanted to, you could come right here. Let's add a ruler track. So now we could see this as time code. And I want to see this as, let's say, above some MIDI tracks. We add another ruler track. I want this to be bars and beats. I want this here to be samples, seconds. So you could have different time code formats, different tracks like that. So let me know if that's what you want. And if you wanted to come over, we could say, let's get to, if you want to see a larger time code display, you could just click here. And you could right click to whether you want to be in bars and beats, seconds, or various time code frame rates as well. So if you get to studio, more options, time display, you could see different time code frames like so. All right, great to see Daniela on. You see Secret Studio says, of course, that volume would be right in my face. So. All right, great to see Tiago checking in from Brazil. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we see Michael Teams is recovering from a medical procedure. We hope you're doing well. Great to see Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo. All right, so we see from Secret Studios the other day, you explained for someone Atmos encoding not being capable for home stereo test. Is encoder software, hardware, what do you need to search for? So I think it's just the Dolby Atmos renderer software. So you could check that out from Dolby. All right, John Costigan's asking if everyone's hit the like button today. All right, Fernando asks, hi Greg, I've adjusted the clip gain to a bunch of audio events. Is there a way to quickly reset all of them to 0 dB? All right, so we just make some edits here. Let's see if we could do it this way. So I have all those selected. I go to the info line and we see volume. We could, so it kind of does it proportionally. You see if there's another way of, if we could do it multiply or just have to do it one by one. We just it looks like it's one by one because it's actually tied to the event. I'll try a couple keyboard shortcuts here, modifier keys, and see. Let me try Alt-Option plus Shift. It will set them kind of proportionally, but not. So it doesn't look like it. I'll play around with it some more over the weekend if you want to email me. But it seems like it's individually per the clip. So let me look at some other place. Let me just come here. Just there's one little function I'm looking for here real quick. Yeah, it's not in the volume curve. So we could do it for multiple volume curves, but I don't think the clip gains. Let's say if I select the volume curves here, if we can remove the volume curve on the different tracks, but it doesn't look like I haven't found a way to reset it all to 0 dB for all of the clip gains. I'll play with it a little bit over the weekend if you want to send me an email. All right, so we see from Roger, hi Greg, does Cubase own an internal transient shaper plugin? So we've created one. So we, if we want to think of it as, I'll just jump back to this project. So if I wanted to take all of my drums in this project here, and it's called envelope shaper, so I'm going to send these to a group. And now I'll just, on this group, I'll just go to, and you'll see it under dynamics, the envelope shaper. So I'm going to just process all my drums. So what you're able to do is to adjust the attack, the decay, and sustain. So as we wanted to. So we want less attack, more attack. We want super tight drums. So play around with the envelope shaper, and that also, if you wanted to do a multi-band version of that. So if we come again to dynamics, there's a multi-band envelope shaper. We could divide the frequency ranges and have just a kick, snare, hi-hat, toms kind of broken down into individual components. Okay, reading through comments. All right. Great to see Gerald Ely from Martinez, California. All right, so we see from Sonic Guppy, how did you do that? How do you change the tempo and time signature? So, you know, if we have done this for like an audio track, I'll just do for a new track. I think it's probably with tempo detection. So I'll just do a new project here. Sorry for hitting my mic. Okay, so let's say we're doing our tempo detection on this, so we don't have... All right, so there's no correlation there. I'll just take my click volume down here. So when I select this, again, go to tempo detection. So now that's created the tempo map. So once you go to project, select the event, go to tempo detection. So if we have pickup notes, like this is our downbeat here, what we could do is just say, I'm going to just click into signature track right on the downbeat, and it'll default to 4/4, but you can enter in other values. So, but let me know if you're referring to something else, Sonic Guppy. All right, so Gnome Guri asks, hi Greg, I have a weird problem. No audio output at all. When I enable a loop, the tracks do play, but not coherently with the visual representation. Thank you. All right. So I don't, so I'm not sure it says when you enable a loop to play, so I'm not sure if it's a loop that's here in, like if that's not playing. So, generally as you kind of play your track, you see everything kind of visually lined up, unless there's, perhaps you have this in a different window, and that window's in the background maybe, and you have an independent loop. So if we want it to enable like an independent loop within the editor here, it's one of the so we could, maybe have nothing's like really kind of jumping out for me with, so let's come over here. Let me just hide this real quick. But, so check to see if, maybe there's an independent loop set up. But, if you have like a picture or a video that you could share, please send it to me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. So clubcubase@steinberg.de. Probably if I see it, I might be able to help you resolve it. Okay, so we have Pro Kingi says, hi, I'm Produce Kingi from Kenya, so thanks for joining us. And we have Bouchane Record Company from Namibia in Africa. Thanks for being on the live stream today. We have a lot of people from Africa usually watch, so it's great. See the Heartbreak Time Machine just says ruler track, thank you. So I'm glad that was kind of what you're looking for. All right, great to see the Pablo, drummer of Hot Mess, is saying hello to everyone. Miss having him on the live stream. He's busy working, being a musician. All right. All right, Sway TV asks, any tips on using the arranger track? Thanks. So, what the arranger track can allow you to do is come up with, a lot of times we have people that are working on kind of multiple versions kind of the same song. And I think Soren had kind of run into this recently where he's wanting to do like a radio edit that's shorter, an extended dance remix, maybe one version that's, on YouTube, a different version for other playback mediums. So let's say we can add an arranger track to our particular project. So once we come over here, we can say, and I have an arranger track already in my project. So what we can do is, let's say we have a song and Cubase is, very adeptly, define kind of the concept of linear sequencer, linear workflows in workstations where we see our beginning, our middle, our end of our project, and we can see exactly where everything is occurring and happening. But if we wanted to take one song and actually take our song and come up with different variations in the arrangement, we can use the arranger track. So once we come over, we can say, we'll create a new chain. So we have all of our parts. Now to add parts that we build the chain on, we could just, within the arranger track, come right over here and define our sections. So once we've done that, we could hold down the alter option and double click to give it a name. So we can say, okay, this is a guitar solo. This is after the guitar solo, and we'll say building to modulation. So again, alter option, click. And we could also have parts within parts, within parts, and within parts. So we could define like the verse, chorus, arrangement, solo, intros, and once we have this done, we could have multiple play orders. So let's say play order 1, I want it to start here, and instead of playing linearly through the project, once I hit play, and I'll turn that down to kill, sorry. So I could come here, and instead of copying all these parts manually, we could just have the arrangement jump to different parts within the song.
Kiss my face, the world was like a brand new place. Felt my fears all fly away. Don't it make you feel good?
So that might be like your single mix. You may have a different arrangement with more parts that's longer for an extended remix. So this way we could have one song, and we see this used a lot with our clients that do commercials where maybe they have to have a 15-second, a 30-second, a 5-second spot. And they could, again, have one particular project and utilize all of the same parts and just take different arrangements of the same song. Now, when we want to turn this from a non-linear arrangement to a linear arrangement, at this point we could open this up so we could see, again, the order, the different components that we could drag and drop in. Then we could just choose to flatten a chain, and that will take it from a non-linear arrangement to a linear arrangement. Great. All right, so we see DJ Mixes asks, how can I change the tempo smoothly in a song 120 beats a minute to 0 beats per minute? For example, like a record player that is turned off. Okay, so let's say we have, like here we have a tempo track. So let's say our song is at 100. Let's say we're at 100 beats a minute. So if we wanted to do kind of like maybe almost like a turntable where it's kind of changing. So what we could do is kind of place all of our audio here. So let's say we have our audio playing. And if we change our algorithm here to tape. So once we do that, I'm going to now say while we're playing, and I want it to sound like I'm going to grab in my tempo. Now that these events are in musical mode, I could just come over and just drop the tempo, let's say from 100 down. So I'm going to turn off my snap. And now the pitch.
It all began.
And then I can say, okay, return back to tempo right there. So now as I make changes, I go faster, slower, the pitch will change, kind of like so you could do it just kind of like that, but you could always just kind of grab like the line tool, and you could just kind of can draw in tempo changes, just or with your pencil tool, just say, boom, we just want that, then go up. So that way, as the tempo changes, the pitch changes once it's placed into tape algorithm. All right, great to see Spa Dogs from Canada. It's great to have you on the Zoom social meetup on Tuesday. All right, so we see from Spa Dogs, is there an easy way to change the main mix in the control room, such as key commands? If you want to change it to, I'm not sure if you want to change it to different speakers, but you could set up, let's set up my remote here. So I'll go to my just remote. We can do it through, I think, keyboard shortcuts. I'm going to do it from, just open up my Nano control. All right, so I want this particular button. And let's go to key commands. And we go to control room. So we could select monitor 1, 2, 3, 4. So I will just come here. I think you could select next monitor as well. So just if you wanted to select like your different monitor speakers here, so we'll see, I only have one monitor here, sorry about that. I'll just add some monitors. So let me know, Spot Dogs, if it's with monitors. So I'll go to my audio connections. Let's just add all right, so now we can see our monitors. and now as we hit that particular button, we could switch between your different monitors, or if you wanted to go to a specific monitor, we could have buttons that just do that. So if you go to key commands to control room, so you could select monitor 1 through 4 or select next monitor for different functions, but let me know if that's what you want to do. All right, Bouchain Record Company. Hi, Greg. How can I make my Groove Agent record with mouse click when it is record enabled mode on? If I click on my Groove Agent, it should be able to record what I click with my mouse. Okay, so let's come over. Let's do new project. All right, so if I open up Kit, all right, so if we wanted to record from this, so right now if we come and place this into record, and I click, it's not recorded, because I think what we need to do is where we see all MIDI inputs, we need to set this to Groove Agent. So now as we hit record, I think this might do it. So now make sure that the MIDI input isn't set to all MIDI inputs, but that it's set specifically to Groove Agent, and then you could just record what you click with the mouse. All right, and we're seeing also from Bouchain Record Company, says it's record enabled, should be able to record my mouse clicks in the same manner the on-screen keyboard. So yeah, let me know if I think that'll do the trick for you. You just have to tell it to do accept directly from that MIDI input from Groove Agent. All right, so we see from Sway TV, says Greg Dead answered one of my questions. I sent an email, so I don't need to have an answer about how to change the time display. Yeah, so just for people's benefit, so when we have the time display here, so we go to our time display, this is often going to be independent. So if I change the settings here, this is still independent because so many people want to see bars and beats here, and they want to see, like, let's say the time code directly here. so that, so a lot of composers will just have this, in their, somewhere, so that they could always have a time code reference available. But this is independent of that, so you just kind of right click in there, but changing this won't change that. All right. All right, so we see from Spa Dogs, says no output bus. I have stereo and quad and want to switch. So inputs from project route to outputs. Okay, so if we have let's say we have a number of tracks here, so let's come over, let's add a couple audio tracks. Okay, so right now when we look at the mixer, these will all be, and we look at routing, these are all going to the stereo output. And if we go to our VST connections, we have, so I have my stereo out or my 5.1 out. So if I wanted to change all of these from stereo to 5.1, we could come over here, and when we go to our stereo out, hold down Alt or Option plus Shift, and now all the outs are set to the 5.1 output. So let me know if that's helpful, but that's how you could change the routing if necessary. And I think if we come over, let's see if we go to direct So let's go to our direct routing. So here, if we want to change all these to stereo out, so in the mixer you have a concept of direct routing. So let's say I have these all to stereo out. And if we come over here to, let's say, our settings, there's this thing where we could direct routing summing mode on. So now I could also select all of these tracks, and I think if we come here, we could say, hold down Alt or Option plus Shift, we could send them all to at the same time to the 5.1 out. And so here we could route to multiple destinations. So if we wanted to always go to the stereo out and always go to the 5.1 out, we could set that up in the direct routing area as well. So that way they could be kind of multiply bused to different destinations. All right, so we see Diamond District Studio says thinking of getting an Avid Artist mix controller for cheap on Marketplace, but can't find any info online about compatibility with Cubase. Would anyone in the chat recommend it? So they were popular controllers for a long time. It was kind of the original Euphonics controller, and then Euphonics was acquired by Avid, and I think they discontinued it. But it uses a protocol called Yukon. So when you go to your studio setup here, you would just simply add a Yukon device. So, and then at that point, once you have a Yukon device, you would just kind of have it configured. So, they work really well. This actually kind of Yukon was kind of a joint venture between Euphonics and Steinberg in its initial development. All right, so we see Spa Dogs It just says you can do it in the menu. You can change the out on the channels, but this does not change the output in the control room. So no monitors, studio audio connections output. Can be changed in the menu with a right click. Yeah, so just because it's being routed out of a 5.1 output doesn't necessarily change it to a 5.1 output on the control room. So those would function independently, but you could go to your 5.1, let's say if we go to your audio connections and we look at your control room here. So if I remove this, I could just say, like in my personal studio, I have a 5.1 in stereo, but if we add a monitor, I could choose to make this monitor instead of stereo to 5.1, but that doesn't necessarily automatically, when stuff is being routed to the 5.1 output, I still need to tell which monitor to send it to my 5.1 output. So it doesn't, those two functions are independent of each other, but I think you'll get what you want, regardless. All right, 808 King asked, Greg, used version 13 on a Mac Studio M1. I was wondering if you ever get the bug when everything looks like it's in Russian, like I'm adding a new instrument track, all the font is crazy. So I haven't gotten that. I know initially, I think with Sonoma, there was a lot of kind of like the very first release of Sonoma had all sorts of like really odd graphics issues. And that was resolved by Apple. Steinberg brought that to their attention. So if you're running the very first OS of Sonoma, make sure you're updating with that. But I haven't come across that. But I'm running, I think, 12.5 on my M1. So I'm running Monterey. So I haven't come across that. All right, let me go to some of the questions that were mailed in. Thanks for all the great questions. And if you've learned a new tip or trick, make sure you do hit the like button. All right, so we just see question, please help, I don't know what to do. Halion Sonic plays MIDI files from Media Bay as Halion 6 also did. No problems. Now I have Halion 7. It does not. It just shows the ports A, B, C, and D, and it won't let you select or connect to them. Whereas Halion Sonic just shows one connection that connects same as any other synth I use. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I deleted everything and installed. It's properly activated as I deactivated it at launch. It within Cubase Online, it activated it. So I know it's activated as it should be. I'm running Cubase 13 Pro on Mac. M2 Mac, I tried it both under Rosetta, normal, it just won't connect. I can place a MIDI file on the channel directly and it plays, but I'm not a good lane key, so I rely on triggering MIDI files from the left-hand browser. Also, already sent a request to Steinberg last week. I've not heard anything, so please help kindly. All right, so let's take a look at it. I think I had kind of a project with this set up. Let me see if I could. Okay, so when I was kind of experimenting with this, I haven't really played it around so much. But so if we want to audition, let's say if I have a sound in Halion Sonic, kind of a classic FM Rhodes sound, and we want to go to Media Bay. So, and let's come over here to loops and sampler. We'll jump and say I want to go to my file browser and look for MIDI files. Okay, so we want to look for MIDI files and let me just jump back to a different location. All right, so we're looking for MIDI files on, let's say, our desktop. Okay, so here's one with kind of a piano. So we could, when we do this, we could audition through, so I have plugins, I have Retrolog here. So let's say I audition. We're now here going through Retrolog. All right, but I kind of ran into this similar thing where we go to plugins and we have a multi-port instrument output that it doesn't seem like when it's set to Retrolog here, like it doesn't seem like that takes when there's, so we still see this check mark next to Retrolog, but maybe, so I'm kind of experiencing the same thing. Realize that all of your sounds that work in Halion 7 will also work in Halion Sonic. So if you wanted to just, access it, I know it's maybe not be the answer that you want, but if we have Halion Sonic open, this is kind of the same playback engine. So now when we come here, I think it might be just when we go to plugins that if it's, I'm not sure if it's going to the layer here or if it's, so now we could audition through Halion Sonic. Halion Sonic should sound silly, but it doesn't seem like it's working with the multi-port. I'll bring that to their attention. So I'm not sure if it's a Halion 6 versus Halion 7 type of thing, but it looks like maybe it's just not selecting that output port. All right, so we had a question. Hello, is it possible to set up Cubase so you can produce on headphones over Bluetooth with ANC enabled? I could use the aux cable, but enabling ANC would really help blocking out noise during lightweight sessions on the train/cafes, etc. When I'm not in the studio, I have a pair of Quiet Comfort SE on the way in the mail. I also have a pair of AirPods Pro. I use Cubase 12 Pro and an M1 MacBook Air. Thank you for help. These sessions always help a lot. So you could do it. I would always recommend doing a wired version. So the ANC shouldn't really have any impact on Cubase. Sometimes when you plug into the headphones on your MacBook Pro M1, I think it's limited to one particular sample rate. So if you don't hear anything, it could be that the headphone amp, I think, only does like 48K or 44.1, but not both. But I think it'll do 96K, but not 44.1 if memory serves. So if your project doesn't work, it could be because of that. Realize that also Bluetooth has a fixed sample rate. I believe Bluetooth is fixed at 44.1K for the sample rate. So that could be problematic as well. Not problematic, but something to be aware of. Also, Bluetooth will give you additional latency. So it's about 43 milliseconds of latency. So if you're trying to actually record anything using kind of software instruments, and you don't have if you have a MIDI controller that could, if you're trying, if you already have your data in there and you're editing, it might not be as critical. If you are, trying to record something or just even click with your mouse or your on-screen keyboard, that latency could be annoying. The ANC is kind of completely independent of how Cubase is treating the audio, so you shouldn't have any problems with that. Just kind of turning that on. That will basically has microphones that point out, take a listen to your environment, and that environment will then be, I believe what they do is they kind of flip the phase so that the noise is canceled out. So, any of your external noise should be blocked out. So the ANC is not really a consideration. But if you have the chance to do a wired connection, it's such a better, it'll be so much more rewarding, I think, for you. All right, we have a question. Is there a way to capture Halion MIDI out to have Halion chord pads or ARPs written in an instrument track as opposed to only having the note that fires the chord? So when we're kind of working with like Halion and Halion Sonic with the chord pads, so we'll just come over. I think we just look for. All right, so now. So if we're listening to this, so when we play, we trigger the chord pads here. So when we do this, these arpeggios aren't necessarily recorded from Cubase. There's not a, we go to our MIDI inputs. Like we saw with Groove Agent earlier, there isn't a MIDI output from Halion into the engine. So when we record this, we could record this particular note, and as we play, we could have that chord, but that may not. But when we look at the notes themselves, it's a kind of a block note that's then playing back through. We come over to our flex phraser. So we'll just come here to our flex phraser, and we could see that we could, just basically. So I'm just playing a MIDI note from my keyboard here. So if we wanted to click on record, what we can do now is come here. And now we can say, okay, we're done recording. And I could just take that particular phrase, and if we wanted to just drag that MIDI out, we can now have the arpeggio of what I just recorded directly in the system, but it doesn't output the MIDI directly from Halion or Halion Sonic in. You could record it internally, and we do these are just triggering pads, and these pads are playing back through our flex phraser. So this is where kind of all the MIDI parts are generated in real time, but not output internally back through Cubase. All right, so we have a question. Hello, I would like to record voices as in a magneto by deciphering it and making either female voices or deeper male voices. I've used musical mode with Elastic Pro tape, but I can't get a satisfactory result like on this video made with our program. I always get a voice that's too robotic and a lot of artifacts. Can you help me? Says thanks to Greg Endo for all these Cubase live streams. So we'll show you how to do kind of very audio. So the program that you sent and Cubase use the same algorithm for doing that. So let's say I wanted to record. I'm going to grab my bass here. Give me a second. Let me plug in. So I want to record something is like very audio. Okay. And then we'll show some voice specific things. All right. So I want to come over here and let's say our tempo, I have a drum loop. And as we play with this, All right, I'm going to get my gain up on my... All right, let me just check. All right, so let's check my connections here. All right, so I have... All right, so what we want to do is, let's say if we wanted to do a very speed recording. So, and this is a technique used by a lot of people. You know, the Beatles used it a lot. You know, classic examples like the piano or the keyboard solo on In My Life. If you think Strawberry Fields Forever. So what we would do is if you wanted to play something at a slower tempo and then speed it up. So let's say my tempo here is at 108 beats a minute and I couldn't play something at tempo. So like while we are recording, I'll just... So let's say I'm doing something in the key of G and I'm not... Let's say I have to slow it down. So what we could do is place our tracks, and we saw this before, in what we call tape mode. Okay? So what I'm going to do now is, so when we adjust our tempo, let's listen to our track. As we play our track, I adjust the tempo. The speed is going to slow down, but also the pitch is adjusted. So what we want to do is to come over and we're going to figure out kind of the ratio of when we adjust our particular notes. What we want to do is figure out the ratio of what our tempo change is to what a semitone is, for instance. So I'm going to come over here. Let's go to our Project Logical Editor. And I'm going to, and I came up with presets. So the ratio that we want to do, you find a preset here. Okay, so let's say I couldn't play in a particular key. Like let's say I'm a bad bass player, and I couldn't play in the key of B flat, but I could play in the key of A. So I want to record in the key of A, but have it play back as B. So when we adjust the tempo, we just... All right, let me just... All right, and there's a ratio here, so I have it in this one. All right, so the ratio is 1.0595 per semitone. So I want to come over here. And I'm just going to look at that one more time. Sorry. So the ratio is 10595. All right, so now when I run this macro, when I run this Project Logical Editor preset, it's going to take the audio, slow down a tempo for exactly one semitone down. So we see my tempo here is at 108 beats a minute. Okay. So now we're at 101.935. So I'm going to record now. So let's say I want to record in the key of A. So as we record it in the key of A, at this point, we will. And if I hit record, that would help. Sorry. Okay, so at this point, let's say I slowed the tempo down and I recorded in A. So as we listen to this, and I open up a retro log and we play an A note. So now if I wanted to set it back to its original tempo, or I could use we want to do our vary speed, and we'll say go up 1 semitone. So now what this will do is take our existing tempo, move it to our original tempo of 108. So now when we listen to the bass recording, it's now going to play back at a different speed. But what I had to do is just place this into musical mode and then have it follow tape. So now, and if we go to listen to our synth, we can now, as we hit a B flat. So if you want to do your vary speed recording and take it down by semitones for recording, you could just run this Project Logical Editor preset that will, in this ratio of 1.0595, that will take it down to exactly 1 semitone or up 1 semitone. So if you wanted to do this for multiple, if you want to go down a minor third, just run this 3 times, or you could set up presets for moving up or down by various amounts of semitones. Now, if you're doing this with vocals, and let's say we are just doing a quick vocal example, and the original question also included part about the vocals not sounding as natural. So let's come over here to some different vocal samples. So as we do this, let's place all of these into tape mode. And probably what you want to do is, you notice that there are several different algorithms. So when we go to our Elastique, probably change the Elastique Pro formant to tape. So now as we would change the tempo, so let's just listen to it kind of without. So as we do this, it speeds up and raises the pitch every time we do this. So, when you do this for vocals, make sure that you also, there's several different, but try doing the formant pitch algorithm for the formant, for the formant tape algorithm for vocals. But again, to automatically do, to change the tempo so that you could have an immediate vary speed down by semitones, again, you could just come over here and choose to change the tempo, and you can multiply or apply or divide by 1.0595, and that will do a semitone for you. All right, let's move on to next question. All right, so we covered that one already. All right, so second question is mailed in. After export, I see an option to open Wavelab after export, but as the screenshot shows, I have Wavelab Elements Pro 11 times 2, Wavelab 12, too many listings. How can I delete some of the versions in that window? All right, so there's a little, if you do a search on your Windows system for a .aepp file, you could find, and I'll show you the exact, and this may be kind of a hidden folder, but let me just go to my desktop. I took a screenshot of it for us. All right. So on your Windows system, and indicated that it was Windows, you want to go to Program Files or Program Data /Steinberg, and then you'll see a folder that's Audio Export Post-Production Scripts. So here we can see that these extensions are AEPP. So I believe that if we just come here, that if we move these files from from this list, try temporarily moving them to the desktop, that these would limit your choices that you see in the post options in the export menu. So again, go to C Program Data /Steinberg /Audio Export Post Process Scripts. And if you just search for .aepp files on your Windows, then you should be able to open that folder. And I think if you remove some of those, that will prevent those from showing up in your list. All right, so we have a question. If I have several takes on one timeline and I want to make take 3 at 7 minutes, can I make that 0 seconds? So I didn't fully understand this. I think it's from Suede Shoes or Suede Studios. But if I'm here, so let's say I have this particular file. So let's say this is take 3, and we'll imagine this is 7 minutes. Okay, so let's say we're there, and can I make that 0 seconds? So if you want this to change, like your start time, so let's say if I'm here, we could just say, okay, I want to go to seconds. Then we could just kind of move, if it's just like the start position of the event, we can just move it like so in the timeline. So we could just change the start position, and we could just very easily just kind of use the mouse scroll wheel to navigate. But let me know if I'm misunderstanding on that. Okay. All right, I'm going to set my bass down and jump back to our live questions. Bear with me just for a moment. And again, you could email questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. Okay. All right, so we see from 808 King, thank you, Greg, for all your dope help. All right. And we see Danielle Tocan on. That's great. Let's see, 808 King says, can I hit the like button like 10 more times for Greg. Will Cubase 13 help me do that? So you could always send a nice letter to the company telling me you like the live streams, or post on social media or something like that. So, or sign in on a different account. All right, so we have a question from Sway TV. Can you please explain the AB option on the range selection tool? So this is a Nuendo only feature, so let's go ahead and take a look. And I think this often is used maybe like for some people that do source destination editing. They could use the AB's range selections. All right, just get a couple of files in. All right, so when we're in Nuendo, so a lot of times I think if people are doing, so we have kind of selection A, selection B, so this allows us to kind of navigate. So let's say if I was doing editing here, I could say, okay, this will be selection A. If I go to selection B, that I could select, and then we could just kind of navigate freely between the two selections. So at that point, if I say, okay, I just want to come here, let's crop that. Let's go to section A, and we'll choose to crop this. And now we could just kind of, if we have this, our grid set up to events, we could now just kind of quickly navigate to events. So it allows us to have two independent range selections. So a lot of times when people are doing kind of classical style editing, they may kind of have a kind of the edited version in multiple takes, and it will go back and forth between range selection A and B. All right, Soapstar, is there a way to make Alt-F open the file menu like in earlier versions of Cubase? I have a hard time using the mouse, and that's really the only shortcut I can't figure out. Okay, so let's come over here. All right, so I'm not sure. So it might be that you have to, because I think generally, like, that may be, let's just see if, a lot of times it's, it may be different on, I think sometimes if you hit, like, the Alt key, and this on Windows, followed by, with, like, slightly separated, like, you go, kind of like, hit Alt plus F separately. I'll check it out. It's different on Mac, but I think it's kind of an operating system function to enter that. So, but check to see if you do like, a slight delay between the Alt and F, like a very short delay but separate, if that makes a difference. But I'll try it on my PC and I can report back on Tuesday's live stream. All right, Michael Teams wants people to smash the like button. All right, wonderful to see Gareth has made it. Saying good evening to all Cubase affiliates. Great to have you on. Gareth's checking in from Spain. Everyone's happy Gareth's on. All right, so Diamond District Studios says effects tracks in Dolby Atmos within Cubase. Do we assign them as beds or objects for them to work properly? I think you want to use beds for that because generally you're panning different elements within the effects, or different objects within the effects beds, but the effects themselves, I believe, will just go straight to the bed. That's the better way to do it. All right, so we see from Ethio Studio, it says hello from Ethiopia. To move Wave on Cubase 13, what do I need to press? Shift and what on a computer keyboard? All right, so I think if we want to move this, I think it's just the Command or Control key plus the left and right arrow keys. And then you can move based upon the grid. So if we have this set to... got my grid here set to bars and beats, and I want to move it by bar. We could just do that, or if we want to move it by beat, so again, Alt or Command or Control plus the left arrow or the right arrow. And if you want to do that for multiple events, you can select and move them like so. Thanks for joining us from Ethiopia. All right, great to see Michael Pierce from outside London at Grand Chapel Studios. Great to see you briefly. Great to see you on the Zoom social meetup. All right, so we have Xylum. Says touching base with Cubase. All right, Gareth wants to like that likey like button in a likable way. All right, see Jazz Dude saying, speculating about a 40 years of Steinberg anniversary sale, and telling Matthias not to hate him if he reads this. I won't tell Matthias. All right, always wonderful to see Grant Nicholas checking in from Baltimore, Maryland. Hope you're doing well. Okay, reading through comments. See, Michael Pierce is saying, hang on, is Greg on Windows today? So I run Windows for my personal studio, and I just have a Mac for work. I'm kind of opposite of most people that way. Seeing just great comments from Graham Witcher on the Hot Mess project. All right, and we have Manuel Ramsier just saying hey to everyone. Thanks for being on. Okay, I see Gareth had to take off. Okay, so we see from Tron a question. Hi Greg, I'm new to expression maps. How do I go about using expression maps with Halion Symphonic Orchestra? Thank you for any help. Windows 7, Cubase 10 Pro. Okay, so let's say we have Halion Symphonic Orchestra. Let's just do a new project here. Okay, so we're going to add an instrument track. Let's load up a Halion Symphonic Orchestra. All right, so when we do this, so a lot of times to make orchestral instruments more realistic, what we want to have is different types of articulation. So if I wanted to come over here, we'll say, let's load up a cello. So when we play a cello, but we may also want to have a cello that plays back, or if we want it to be, let's say, let me just, so we can have a kind of expressive. We could also do portamento. So when we want to now switch between different articulations, such as pits, spiccato, tremolo, trills, what we're able to do now is to, let's create just a quick part, and I'll just do some quick nonsensical input here. Alright, so I'll just make this larger here. So let's, okay, so I want to do just quarter notes and all right, so now that we have our expression map, and if we're doing this within, beautiful things with Halion is it can automatically import the key switches for that instrument. So when we do this, we could now say we want to see our articulations and dynamics. I'll make this larger. So let's say as we're playing, I want to first start with legato between these. And then at this measure, I want to switch to pizzicato. And what these are going to do is basically switch different samples that are played. So now we come over here, let's start legato as we listen to it. And then I could just say, okay, I want this to be legato and one note pizzicato, like do everything to irritate the real musician. And now let's do a half-tone trill. So we could just come over here. So again, as we play now, we could just say. So this allows us to do different articulations for the instruments, and and to have it automatically extrapolated from the instrument just by doing the import key switches allows you to take advantage of all the articulations that companies have designed for the particular instrument, so that so many people are using 10% of what their instruments are doing because they don't know how to get to their sounds. Now we can graphically see how everything is laid out for us. So that's kind of what we do with the expression maps. Jazzy Lomel says, "Hey Greg, greetings. I have a question about Wavelab. I would like to know how I can EQ, compress each track in an audio montage without touching the master." Okay. So let's open up Wavelab. Okay, so let's say I have a montage here. Okay, now we can have tracks when we go to our master section. We could have plugins that are going to basically work, on the entire track here. So let's say I want everything to go through this EQ, but we may want particular clips or particular tracks to go through EQ as well. So I think if you just right click, let's just come over here to edit. I thought that there was a way. All right, so when we do this, we'll see this master section and the inspector. So now if I click here on the inspector, we could say let's edit the clip. So when we go to add an effect here, this effect is only on this clip. So we will now come over. This clip has that. If I select another clip, I could have different effects, different plugins on this particular clip. So I wanted this to have dither for some reason, and I wanted this clip to have a different plugin. So now when I select the different clips, we could see their plugin show up that's tied directly to the clip. Now, just like we could do for clips, we could do for tracks. So I could select a track, have a plugin on this track, and I wanted a different plugin on this track. So now when I go to the select a track or select a clip, we can have, depending, so if we go to our clip, now when I select a clip, that particular plugin shows up. When I have track, those particular plugins for the track show up, or the master output where everything is going through here. So once you go to the master section, you can now just come over, choose the master section. This is global. Or if you want clips, clip-based or track-based effects, you can just whatever select it once you're in clip or track mode will work for you. All right. All right, so we see Daniela Tocan had to take off, so thanks for joining us today. It's great to see you guys on the Zoom social. All right. John Costigan says, Greg, I can try singing bass with your really clever bass guitar transposition trick. So yeah, give it a try. It's a lot of fun. See Gareth is saying it's Steinberg's Ruby anniversary. Yeah, so it's amazing. It's been around for 40 years. So I've been fortunate to be there for. I'll be starting my 32nd. I'll be starting my 33rd year in April. So. All right, wonderful to see Keith Young. Says I'm sitting here quietly listening as usual, so that's great. We're glad that you stopped by and said hi. All right, so we see Jim just saying hi, everyone. Made it 2 Fridays in a row, so that's great. We see DJFK just says it's groovy. All right, let's see if we have more questions that kind of sneak in. I think we're at the end of questions. We'll wait and see. And Jim just says, thanks, Greg. Thanks again, Greg, for the help with Groove Agent last Friday. Already using exporting settings to Cubase. So it's great. Yeah, it's a wonderful feature. I was glad that they were able to implement that into Cubase. All right, let's see if there's more questions that sneak in. We had a lot of great questions. And again, if you've learned a new tip or trick, and please feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And again, we do these on Tuesdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. So I believe that's 10 a.m. in California or Pacific Time Zone. UK, it's 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. for Central Europe time, so Germany. All right, so you see Michael Teams says, congratulations on your accomplishment. 1 gallon of coconut almond ice cream for you and the family. It sounds wonderful. It'll make my throat feel nice and good after talking for 3.5 hours. Thank you for the kind words. Jazzy Lomel just says, thanks, Greg, for all you do. So it's very rewarding being able to help people. All right, so we see from Buchain Record Company, on-screen keyboard, can it be resized? So I think it's fixed. So we hit Alt or Option plus K if you're not familiar with it. Of course, I had to leave it on just a pad. Let me just... So I don't think it could be resized, but you can also just, if you want to see there, so you can use the particular your computer keyboard to play it, but I don't think most people kind of use the mouse, but you can if you wanted to. One other thing, if you wanted it bigger, you can also, let me just come over here, so that's let me just show this one thing real quick. If you want like a bigger thing, we could do is also like while it's playing, I think we could come over. I'll just take out a step entry mode, but you could just see if we put this into record. Used to be a trick to do this. So you could also just kind of click if you want the keyboard bigger. Just You could just, if you want to do it kind of horizontally. So if you just place Cubase and record and hit the keys on the side here, so let's say I would play, record, and now. Just in case you like to look at your keyboard, invert it 90 degrees. So, but if you wanted it bigger, you could just kind of click here on the mouse as well. And this you can make larger or smaller depending as well. So you could use the keys on the side as a keyboard input as well. Okay. So we see Suede TV says, any tips on audio to text functions in Wavelab or Nuendo 13 Windows? So there is something that you could do within Spectralayers. So let's say if I'll just import the new file, but there is kind of transcription inside of Spectralayers. All right, let me just I just did some doing comparison of USB microphones. So I have just some text here. All right, so let's say if we come here.
Or you can ask questions in advance by sending an email to clubcubase@Steinberg.
All right, so what I'm going to do is take this into, so I know you asked about Nuendo or Wavelab, but if you have Spectralayers, which is such a fantastic tool, we'll come over here to Spectralayers. And then when we get to unmix, we go to transcription. We can tell it we want to be in English, but there's other languages. All right, and then as we look at it in Spectralayers here,
AG01. Welcome to the Club Cubase live stream. Typing your question in the chat field. Today we will be listening to 3 different USB microphones.
All right, so let's say, and I think that once we are in, but we could export that as text. We just see if it's in the transcription. But so here we could do this, and it can be exported as text. I'm just having a brain cramp. So we go to our transcript, and we can see the transcript right here. So if we just wanted to listen to it here.
AG01. Welcome to the Club Cubase live stream for December 6, 2021. If you have not attended a live stream before, you can ask questions in advance by sending an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de or by simply typing your question in the chat field.
So you can see it just got everything right. We could choose to export this, and there's several different file formats that you could export it as. So if you want to do like text CSV file, so if you do a CSV file, you could then actually have the text, you could import the CSV file into Nuendo as markers, and you could have all the transcription as the text for markers as well built into Nuendo. So if you're looking for kind of audio transcription, that's a phenomenal tool for that. And again, it could work with different languages very easily. Okay. All right, so we see Bouchain Record Company just says send me your email. So I'm not sure if that's directed to me, but if you want to email me, you could send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, John Koskins just says I've learned some very valuable tips and tricks today. Thanks, Greg, and everyone for the great Q&A. Okay, we have from Secret Studios, I'm going to try all new things on Tuesday and Friday. Laughing out loud, but seriously, is it possible to decrease the number of bands in the stock multiband compressor? All right, so if we wanted to do that, we could, let's just come over here to the inserts, dynamics, and we'll say our multiband compressor. So I think we could go between 1 and 4 bands. So really all you have to do, I think if we just come over, we just just having a brain cramp on this. Let me just see if we could turn those off and kind of. So here we could have different frequencies, but there is, let me just, so we just come here, we could turn on and off the bands. So, but I think that yeah, so now we could only have one band to work with for the particular frequency range, but I think that there's another method of doing it as well. But you could deactivate them, but you could just have, the 1 to 4 bands. All right, so we see from Michael Pierce, a very quick question. I cross-graded to Nuendo 12 last year. It seems like it came with Spectralayers 9. It's under my product /Nuendo, but it doesn't authorize. Am I dreaming? Support think I may be. So with Nuendo 12 or Cubase 12, you would get Spectralayers 1. So it's kind of like an included bundled version, but you get Spectralayers 1, which is kind of the light version. It allows you to extract vocals from particular files, but it's not the full Spectralayers version. So it's not Spectralayers Pro or Spectralayers Elements, but you do get a kind of a lighter version of Spectralayers. So you should be able to run that version as opposed to Spectralayers Pro. So there will be some different licensing for that. All right, great to see Chris Halion on. I believe he's in Athens, Georgia, from Columbus. So he says, does anyone have a favorite mouse? I'm looking for gaming mice that have easily assignable buttons. So if there's ones I should avoid, please let me know. So I think it's a Logitech G600, and I just see Jazz Dude just posted that. But check, and I think one of the guys, the best Korean Jesus, did a tutorial video and kind of mapping it out with functions in Cubase. So there's a lot of great functionality there as well. But, you know, I've always liked the Logitech mice. I just kind of have a generic mouse that works on 3 separate computers. So I can have one keyboard and mouse and be able to work on multiple computers. But check out some of the Logitech stuff is great. And Michael Pierce is saying the Logitech MX Master for him. All right, I think we had a question that was mailed in. Let me just check my email quickly. See. All right, so I just got an email confirmation. All right, so from Boochain Studios, I got that. I'll respond to that. Okay, so I got an email about the resetting clip volumes. So we'll see if we can, I'll see if I can get that figured out. There's a way. You can see Michael Pierce lost one of his mice. All right. All right, let's see if there's, let me clear my throat. All right, let's see if there's any more questions that kind of sneak in. If not, we could wrap up a little early. I hope that everyone has learned a new tip or trick, and if you do, you know, make sure that you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Again, we do this on Tuesdays and Fridays. If you have friends that aren't aware of it, you know, let them know, and we're happy to answer any Steinberg related question. We'll just give it our 30 seconds or so, see if there's more questions that sneak in. I see that Gareth is using a Wacom tablet. Given our couple of seconds, and with that we'll wrap up. All right, so we see from Jazzy, it says, great session. Thanks, Greg. See you all Tuesday. Thanks for all your help. I appreciate everything that you do for helping the community. All right, we'll give it another 10 seconds and then we'll wrap up. So once again, just I appreciate everyone spending part of your morning, evening, afternoon learning about Steinberg products, and hope that everyone's learned some new tips and tricks, and look forward to answering more questions next week. And we hope that everyone has a wonderful weekend. All right, see if there's see some more comments coming in. So we see Gareth says Michael Pierce must mix a Hot Mess song one day. So that'd be a lot of fun. All right, so I guess with that we've gone through all the questions. So thanks again for all the wonderful questions. I thought it was like a lot of really interesting questions today. So, and with that, we will go ahead and wrap up. We'll be back on Tuesday. Everyone, please stay safe and healthy, and we will make sure to be here answering more questions, helping your Cubase sessions out for you on Tuesday. Everyone have a great day, and we will see you on Tuesday. Take care. Goodbye.